Hello and welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the vlogcast that gives you a peek inside the minds of some truly inspirational teachers. During this, the very first of 7 episodes in Season 1, I sit down for a chat with Lloyd Williams-Jones, a deputy head teacher in Kent, who shares his experience of teaching and leading in the southeast of England, as well as divulging how a chance encounter with education research changed the course of his career entirely. Whether you're new to teaching or a school leader with tons of experience, this interview is a must listen. Now, if you happen to be listening on your preferred podcast provider, don't miss out on the extended cut in which Lloyd takes on the EduBook tier list, ranking some of his all-time favourite education titles. Full interviews are available from the Thinking Deeply About Primary Mathematics YouTube channel or thinkingdeeply.info, where full show notes and references can be found. And without further ado, let's spend some time thinking deeply about primary education. Today we've got Lloyd Williams-Jones with us, and to start off we're going to cover Lloyd in numbers. So Lloyd, very quickly, I'm going to ask you some questions and you can only answer using numbers. So
no problem.
Years as a teacher.
10.
Number of schools.
3.
Current form entry.
2.
Last year group taught.
6.
Wheels caps.
I think it's 7. Did a calculation, and caveat, age grade caps, not full caps, but yeah, 7 age grade caps. I think back in the day, long time ago.
Years in England.
10 for my sins.
Snippet videos.
I think there's 5.
Snippet videos on the author's website.
I think that's 2. Holly Cavan, Doug Lamont.
Very impressive. And number of tweets.
3,094. So pretty low, I reckon.
Lloyd, you are currently a deputy head teacher at a school in Kent. How did you get there? Tell us about your journey as a teacher.
No problem. So I started training a long time ago in Wales. I had to fight tooth and nail to get onto a PGCE. I literally had to kick the door down to try and to get on the course. It was outrageous, outrageously hard and oversaturated in South Wales at the time. I think it still is. Everyone was going into primary education. There was grants to support it, so it was kind of like, yeah, let's get on the bandwagon and do a bit of primary PGC. So anyway, finally managed to persuade Swansea to let me in, and did my training down there in the Town Hill campus. And from there, basically learnt the Welsh curriculum. Probably less said about that the better at the minute. There's the old one as well. I was like, right, okay, I need a job, and decided to head my way to London, up to Hackney. I thought, right, yes, get my first job in the pits of hell of Hackney. So that was where I was forged in my early career, sort of wet behind the ears, fresh-faced, without a beard, strolling my way into East London, looking nothing like a hipster, nothing like I do now, and bowling into an extremely multicultural, diverse school with not a Scooby about the English curriculum, and just got straight in and made loads of mistakes, and didn't know what the hell I was doing for a long time. Then I thought I knew what I was doing for a bit and got a bit confident and was like, yeah, I've got this. I got 3A and 2B down, and I was sort of at that point, and then I moved out from there down and took a job as assistant headship at Kings Hill down in Kent, and basically that was a bit of another baptism of fire, because I took on to lead in maths. And to be honest, I didn't really have a huge knowledge of maths. I'd worked on some working parties, had done no reading. But again, try and doing the old confident bowl into the role. and managed to start reading, and I'll come on to that later. Why sort of what happened there, but changed my whole outlook. And then, as of September, I've stepped up to a deputy headship down in Staplehurst. So it's been quite a journey and quite I would say, eclectic mix of schools. I've had good broad experience across a different number of settings, I suppose I'm better for it, maybe in the long run. But it's kind of brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, so I can totally relate, because obviously a long time ago I moved from the Northern Irish education system over to the English one. What was the biggest culture shock when you moved over, or when you moved across to England?
For me, it was like the rigor in the system for me, like compared to the Welsh system. I was just like, whoa, okay. Like, I'd been in a school where the teacher I was with hadn't changed the wall space for 2 years. And I come to England it was a school. It was Millfields Community School in Hackney, and basically they weren't RI. What the old guard? It was we were noticed for improvement, so we were just above that satisfactory band, but it meant you could employ NQTs. If you were inadequate, you weren't allowed NQTs. And I was just in that. I had no idea. Yet, of course, I didn't read the Ofsted report. Why would I read the Ofsted report? I wanted a job. Do you know what I mean? I just went straight in, and and it was just like, whoa, what is this? What are these levels? How does this all? In Wales, it was none of that. It was blooming scouting out, doing a bit of discovery learning over here, and just doing some forward rolls. Do you know what I mean? That's what I felt like I was doing in Wales. I literally come up and was like, crikey Moses, like I literally like baptism of fire. Like, but yeah, what about you? Is that same for you, or is there quite rigor in the Northern Irish system?
Well, I think one thing I've noticed about the south of England is that the day seems to start a whole lot earlier over here. Just in general, I've never seen as many people on the roads at 6, 7 in the morning. Like when I trained, 9 o'clock was sort of your typical starting time. But I think we both started around the same time, and it was the time of APP.
Oh,
and that looking back on it now, that wasn't necessarily
great.
Because it was right in the middle of the workload building up to what it became, and I think we're heading in the right direction in many places. But it was peak workload. I had a full head of hair whenever I started teaching, and the workload got rid of that.
It ground you down like this. We all lost many a Sunday to those. And we were colouring them in, and I remember like trying to format the boxes so I could squeeze extra little tick boxes into them, and all. I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Like literally, like not thinking about the writing itself at all. Like and God, yeah. Thank you, say. Hopefully, we've come through the other side of that bonkers practice, like bonkers.
Yeah, but it was total culture shock, because I think we had the programs to study back home, but nothing as in detail as those APP grids in the national curriculum. So it was interesting, but like you say, all the better for it, because I think it's I don't think I'm going back to the Northern Irish system anytime soon.
No, me to Wales, mate. That's the same.
The thing about Lloyd in class, and we're thinking about how we can support those teachers who are just getting into the game, who are looking to develop their practice. What would you say the 4 most prominent features of a Lloyd lesson would look like? What would they be?
Right. So I'd probably boil it down to 4 things, in a sense of probably 4 practical applications, I would say, that I utilize to try and leverage as much sort of understanding and learning within the session as I can. So I would say the first one would be the cold call / no opt out. I think that is, and like I said, this is the work of Doug Lamov and Tom Sheridan's picked up on it with his work with walkthroughs, and we'll touch on that later or whatever. But in terms of the power of that, just that nuance of being able to give that understanding that a child is going to be picked, and that the culture in the class is supportive, and that they know the accountability is there, that they're going to get asked, and if they do get asked, they don't give the old, I don't know what I'm doing, don't know, even if they're in a checkout, there's no checkout, it's like, okay, no problem, but we're going to come back to you, I'm going to jump over here and I'm going to speak, and you bounce around the room, and you really you glean that understanding of what's going, trying to get an understanding of what's going on in their mind, with their understanding of things, and then what you do with it. And I think that's something that that as I've gone on with this technique, that is something like what you actually, the purpose then. So it's great. It's a great technique, right? And I've just said about why, but it's then like the purpose is actually what do I do with that then? Once I understand, how does that impact? Like, what do I change? What do I remodel? What do I move? What pace does that push me forward? Does that accelerate me forward? It's that like granular thinking and decision making that on the coal face that is hard and takes a lot of time to master. But the deep purpose of doing that stuff is what I think I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I think it's something that is integral to my sessions. That's the first one. Second one is the problem pair. So the problem pair effect, and just having that would be that it's maths, be it it can be RE. At the end of the day, having a structure to go from, having something that a worked example on the board, be that whatever it is. It just scaffolds our thinking so much for children. I think it's a valuable tool. And I know there's something that I haven't moved to yet is the I, we, you model, obviously, which builds on that. Something that I know a lot of schools do. I know Matt Swain and Step Academy Trust do a lot. It's very deeply embedded in their places. A lot of schools do as well. A few schools locally as well that do it, and I think that's something that I probably hadn't thought about before, but is something that's where I want to take it next with my how I show problems and how I present information as well, without it being too extraneous as well. So having them covered up as you go, so revealing them as well, so that there's not too much information, too much extraneous load for going on the board. So that's the second one. So I've got cold call, no opt out. And a problem pair. My third thing would probably be a diagnostic or hinge multiple choice question. Now, diagnostic questions by Craig Barton, wonderful bank of resources there. I'm speaking mathematically now, I suppose. I do a lot. I teach a maths group daily, and they're an integral part to what I do. I write my own ones as well, and just that ability to expose misconception. And to develop rich conversation around what's going on. So the way I kind of use the diagnostic question will be to sort of ask the children to give me an answer, A, B, C, or D, and they show me on their hand, so A, B, C, or D. And then 5 is that I don't know, and I tell them I want to see if you don't know, because I'd rather than them guessing, I'd want to know that they don't know. And then I get them to put their heads down so there's no biases and they're not drawn by any other children. They present either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's great because they've got their heads down, so I can make notes quite oblivious to the fact that I'm kind of just picking out those people. That then gives me a good selection of who I want to cold call moving forward as I go into the next part of the lesson. So I'm kind of systematically using that information. I'm also then going, okay, 6 of them have picked D, which is the misconception of this. I'm going to straight away hit that, and I'm going to address that misconception. So it's responsive, and it's that idea, it's that purpose of why you're doing something. So having a diagnostic hinge question, and I'm currently looking into the confidence weighted ones, which I've managed to get some information from names. We'll leave the names out of it, a powerful learning tool that is, and I think it's underused actually within education. So cold call, no opt out, problem pair, diagnostic hinge multiple question. My last thing is live marking at pace. It's that old tracking and marking thing, like, as we're going along, and how you move children along, and you ensure the right kind of pitch and the right amount of practice and deliberate practice of something, and then deepening as well. And how do we move children, onto something that they need. Just today, reading Neil Allman's blog about challenge, the challenges for the learner. So that process of live marking at pace enables that to happen. It enables that ability for you to allow the learner to connect with the challenge that you want for them, rather than the generic, forced out sort of thing. You can personalize that challenge a little bit more. Can you do this for me? Can you flip that around? Yeah, and okay, that is hard, and it takes practice. It takes time. It takes effort. I still haven't mastered it by any stretch, but I do think there's a real value in that. So to sum up: cold call, no opt out, problem pair, diagnostic hinge, multiple questions, and live marking at pace. They're my 4 probably integral things for what you'd see in my lessons anyway.
The 2 things that really stand out are, the first is that they're very well described in terms of, they've been given a name, and they've almost given a name to things that effective teachers did really well. But if you're trying to pass that information on to your less experienced colleagues, you need a title to say, okay, cold calling, and then all of the sort of the underpinning that goes with it. That's you then discuss that, because I think in the past I've heard it, we don't do hands up or things like that, and really having that name really helps your less experienced teachers, because you've got a hook on which to bring everything else together. Because there's so much more to it than children not putting their hands up, as you really well described. But having that name, that title, allows us then to attach other pieces to it.
That's right. It gives a shared dialogue as well, doesn't it, in terms of bringing that consistency to your school or group of schools, and kind of what Doug Lamont says. He says, "See it, name it, do it." Isn't it? Is that what his term is? It's a great, it builds on that concept, isn't it, of that shared dialogue. You're absolutely right. That it's an integral part to getting the culture right, I think, in your schools.
Yeah, I think I came across strongly in all 4 of your points. Thinking about diagnostic questions, we're under no illusions as to what the role of those questions are, and so that makes it easier for us to implement them, because we know what we're trying to achieve. And then obviously your expertise builds over, years of utilizing them. And the second thing that stood out was how each of them connected to one another. And so, for instance, if anyone with less experience or just starting out is listening, then I suppose they should think about, yes, we can break each of those down into separate parts, but together, that's where the real strength comes from. Because with your significant expertise in the classroom, with your experience, you can take those separate parts and you can bring them together into one sort of homogeneous and effective tool, which will get the best out of your learners and which will inform you going forward. And so I think those are the 2 things that really stood out. And I think if I think about my own practice, those are definitely some of the things that I would consider integral to my instruction and my teaching in the classroom too. Nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on there. You're spot on. And yeah, that whole tying thing together, like that's a biggie actually, a real biggie.
I suppose that ties into my next question. And we're thinking about sort of instigating change on a school-wide level. What does that almost mean to you, and what does that look like to you? I suppose we could tie that in with the previous question. When you think of school-wide change, and obviously in your new role as deputy head teacher, it's going to be an important part of your day-to-day sort of working life for the foreseeable. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's a swift learning curve for me. I've obviously been in leadership like for several years, and I have been part of school improvement, but not in this way before. Like where I really am now in the driving seat for change. We're an RI school, so we've got a lot to do. We're in a good position, but we've got a lot to do. We've got a fantastic team there as well. And I guess that team has been put together by my head, who has really assembled some excellent people there, made some great choices, put some great people in great positions who, have built a strong level of communication there, which is something that I've not been really like that deep, like strong lines of communication where things have systematically, there's rigor there. That's massive. Like I've not really experienced that before, and to have it's like, whoa, this is quite special. So, but I would say like the things that, for my very limited experience at the moment of like proper school improvement, I would say trust and relationships is absolutely essential. Like before anything happens with anything, there has to be a trust. There has to be a professional trust there. And a building of those relationships, because that allows rigor to flourish, and for me, and it's the bedrock for it, and so you must build those carefully, and you must build them in a way which, and this is something I've been learning, and again, I'll quote Matt Swain here, because this piece of advice he gave me, Matt over at the Step Academy Trust. He said that you got to support some stuff that you're not on board with in the interim period, because you have to, because you're not like Rome, like say, you chase all the rabbits and all that. You've got to go with it, and you've got to support it, because ultimately there's a value, there's a worth in that, because it will fundamentally, you will bring about long-term change by doing that. And it's something that I've wrestled with, and I thought, yeah, do you know what? That is absolutely spot on, because and you're sitting there through gritted teeth at times, and talking about, I'm thinking I could chuck all the cog side books at you, and go, no, damn you, that's wrong, But there would be no value in doing it, because all that would do would be to crush that sort of that trust and that relationship that I just spoke of. It would crush it. And then you're building on sand a bit, and fundamentally, I guess I'm speaking from a position where, although we're RI, Lucy, my head, has done tremendous amounts of work already to set leadership, right? So perhaps, I'm speaking for a certain context, and it's the same with when you're speaking about anything, isn't it? It's all context specific, but my context is there's enough stability there to pick up on what Matt said there, and to really build those relationships so that you can push things forward. So I would say, to develop the right culture, you win the trust, then you go from there. I think that is huge.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because was it in Learning to Improve, they say implement fast, learn slow, and then burn goodwill as you go. And you need as many people as you can coming with you on the journey, because that makes life so much easier. And if you incrementally, and you start with the foundations and then build and build, I think it's much more conducive to long-term systemic change. And really, I think how we should all be approaching sort of leadership in general, because I don't know, it could just be my impression, but the system of accountability doesn't necessarily support, the fact that it takes maybe 5 to 10 years to really make a lasting impact. And really, it's there's some very brave heads who say, no, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it properly, and then they reap the rewards, a couple of years down the line. It's 100%. And you're using walkthroughs. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us about that, because I've read the book. Really interested to know what it's like in practice, because it reads fantastically well, and it makes things really, really clear. So what's that like in school?
Yeah, it's a very, very good package, a suite of principles, I would say, really, to good teaching. And what it does is it allows you to have a common language that sits outside of the teaching standards, that actually it is all the things that you kind of wish you'd been taught when you were I wish I'd been taught in my initial teacher training, like all those things where they've really captured the essence of good teaching, context free, and that's the kicker. It's the context free bit that is fantastic, because it's applicable then to any organization, and you mold it and you shape it and you work it, and just having that ability to do that is fantastic. And I guess I'm fortunate in that I've got a good network of people that I speak to and work with, both in and out of school. And I do a lot of professional reading in my spare time as well. So I'm able to supplement it and really take it and make it context specific for Staplehurst. And what it's done is allowed me, like I say, a very smooth and kind of structured way of conveying some of the really core principles that actually quite few of them hadn't reached Staplehurst, and so it's a fantastic tool for upskilling your staff and being able to really promote those core principles of instruction and understanding and teach good teaching, really. So like we've used it in a sense of like we've because it's early and they're early in the development of the subscriber package as well. So it's developing all the time. Ollie and Tom are constantly working at developing forum materials that come up every week and change and added, and people are sharing and collaborating, which is really powerful again. But we've actually started to work it into our performance appraisal as well. So what I'm trying to do is bake it into the very heart of what we do, and it's linked back to our appraisal. So I've taken the work of Chris Moyes and his Growing Great Teachers model and fused our walkthroughs with that process. And we've gone away from the data targets in appraisals completely. It's now about professional pedagogical development and how we can leverage better teachers and therefore better outcomes for children in our school, really. So that process is like it's a work in process. It's something that we're going to see the first round of appraisal, how it goes after the half term. But I'm excited by it, and I think that I would highly recommend it for school improvement for schools, because it genuinely, if we do theme walks, we're trying to develop a very open culture, in and out, less, no punitive, sort of to really foster that culture of developing, of improving, not proving, as Chris says, and to go in and be able to, go on a theme walk. We ping straight away feedback back to teachers and say, oh, this was great, bang, page whatever of the walkthroughs. We can instantly signpost good practice to the actual thing that it's codified down in this thing. And there's a power in that. You go, Joe did a fantastic cold call, signal pause insist in year 5. It was wonderful. She just bang, classroom. If you want to have a look at that, it's on page, they then can actively pick up and look at that and think, and developing that culture. So that's, kind of like we're moving to like a coaching model, and to really try and empower teachers by using this as a driving force in the school. So it's so far extremely impressed with the materials. So
that sounds superb, because you've got empowering teachers, shared culture, shared understanding of what things and what the feedback actually means, and also you're taking away that unnecessary accountability, which there's no real proof that having data in your appraisal target will actually help anyone learn anything with it anymore.
I know it's never helped me in 10 years of teaching be any better teacher. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's
it's a powerful set of resources.
Yeah, I think it looks a lot like the future, and hopefully, fingers crossed, because it seems to have its priorities in the right place. And then,
I would say so.
Because I haven't read it. It's very, very high quality. And to be honest, if I'd had it 3 years ago, it would have made my job a whole lot easier back then. But it's all good.
I know.
So we met and bonded over a shared love of education research.
We did.
And then the rest is history. What was the paper that changed the world? I like to call it the Thunderbolt, because nothing's the same after you've got the Thunderbolt. Um, and what is the number one paper that you think all primary teachers should read?
Right. So I would say my Thunderbolt paper came on the back, actually, of a book. In, oh gosh, it would have been about 4 or 5 years ago now, when I first landed in Kent. I went to the Kent Maths Conference and saw Craig Barton speak. And I was, again, it was a day out. I was the maths lead. I didn't really know a huge amount at that point. I thought I did, but and he was last on. He was the keynote at the end of the day. I was like, oh, I was even considering swanning off and going to Burger King. But to be honest, probably the best decision I've ever made in my entire life was to not swan off and get a Burger King, because Burger King's always there in the morning, And I watched Craig speak, and I was just dumbfounded. I was absolutely dumbfounded. And I joined Twitter that night and swiftly had an existential crisis about, like he said, how little I know about anything, and how I'd neglected the body of professional research and reading that has sat there for so many years, through a willful ignorance and an overconfidence that just I look back on with sheer embarrassment. And so I got his book straight away. And one of the papers, I'd say the stand-up, because obviously he's brilliantly referenced that book. And one of the first papers that he references and talks about in that book is Kirshner's Why Minimal Guidance During Instruction Does Not Work, which I know it's if you ask teachers about what papers are seminal, and I would imagine I wouldn't be the only ones quoting that as a thunderbolt, because it just blew the landscape open in terms of thinking towards instruction and how we can really kind of put to bed a lot of discovery learning and stuff that I'd done in teaching. I looked back on and thought, I've wasted hours and hours of my time doing things that had no purpose whatsoever. And that for me was a massive thunderbolt striking my teaching heart. So and starting it again, probably, I would say, in a good way, massively important paper, that. Yeah.
The one thing that stands out to me about that paper is how well written it is. There's not a word wasted in taking their position forward.
Absolutely.
And so in the past, when I've been looking at examples of well-written introductions and things, I'll always go back to that because of how striking it is that,
it is.
They've got a message, they've got the sort of, they've done the legwork, and then they are absolutely clinical in their execution of that paper. So I can totally see where you're coming from. And
hearing them speak on Carl and Paul and Craig on Craig's podcast the other day was just, it kind of solidified that, when Paul was explaining all about the process of writing the paper and how he'd gone back and forth, and the sort of the rigor in the process that he'd gone through in writing it, but he'd never ever expected it to get to have the reception that it did in the education and research community, but just you're absolutely right. It's just it's a thunderbolt. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. 100%. And then one paper that all primary teachers need to read, as well as Kirshner et al.
Right. I'm gonna give one it's a recent read for me, and it's one that has massively sort of made me sit up, and I think it's really important. And it's Mary Kennedy's Parsing the Practice of Teaching. And it's not a particularly long paper, but it is wonderfully astute. And what it did for me was kind of, she explains quite clearly. You talked earlier about how everything comes together. Well, she kind of breaks it down into 5 key sections. So 5 things that work that novice teachers need to crack And I'm obviously thinking about this as an important thing. I think this is an important paper, A, for a novice person reading it, if you're engaging with research, because it lays it out. B, for someone who's more experienced, because they can look back and think if they're in part of the school improvement process, it's important. So she talks about an alternative approach to passing practice, and basically she nails it. She takes it down to 5 things: portraying the curriculum, enlisting student participation, exposing student thinking, and containing student behaviour. Now, so when you look at those principles, right, and what she says, and she goes into more detail about how, well, it's interesting because she doesn't tell you what to do, but she kind of just makes you deeply consider purpose. And I think that's what I was saying to you about purpose, about like, and she says how these 5 elements, how they play, they enact, and their relationship between each other is key. So like, if there's something, there's give and take. If you've got behaviour, let's say you've got a more higher end stimulus in your lesson, there's something going on, then the likelihood is the behaviour is gonna be needed to be adjusted slightly because to account for this. Do you see what I mean? Like, and it goes, and then curriculum planning it has an impact on this, and it's kind of, and then to provide that, you need to have thought about your planning structures and how that. So it's like the purpose and why, and what essentially what she says is, early career teachers and novice teachers will look at good practices and say and look at cold calling and go, yeah, fantastic, yeah, great. I've seen it. I've seen that good practice happening. And I've been told why it's good, but then when they're in front of a class, cold calling, when's the right time to cold call? What do I do with the cold call? What is the deeper purpose to this stuff? Okay. That for me is what it struck me as is this, like, it's the core of teaching. It's like it's the nuts and bolts of teaching that almost goes. It got me to think a step deeper than walkthroughs again. Like it got me to think, okay, walkthrough sits here and here's the why, is underneath how this stuff kind of plays off each other. It's messy and it's complicated, but it's what teaching is. And for me, and Peps McRae in his new book about motivation, funnily enough, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, but he opens that book with education is compulsory but learning is not, and it's a quote from this paper that I hadn't realised it's from this paper. So it's obviously been an important paper for him. I hadn't realised. I'd come across it because Josh Goodrich, who develops Powerful Action Steps, it's another fantastic resource, but I won't go into that now. He recommended the paper to me. Tremendous paper, and I would suggest all teachers read it. Passing the practice of teaching.
Excellent. Well, I suppose I think there are a few people that I'm aware of that think as deeply about teacher development than Peps McRae. So if he's been inspired by this paper, then it sounds like an absolute must read. And just the way you've described the relationship between those different parts. You can almost see why it takes 10 years to get anywhere near decent at this job, Exactly. And I think the more teachers in their first year or in their initial training, the more that they realize that it's a journey and that, you're going to be supported on that journey, then the profession will be a whole lot better off for it. So that sounds excellent. Right. So I don't think I've read that myself, but the first thing I do when we finish this call is go and read that paper.
Yeah, honestly. It is something. It's quite something.
Nice, awesome. Well, it's been fantastic speaking to you, Lloyd.
Thanks, Chris.
It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully, anyone listening will find it useful.
Hope so.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been. Thanks very much, and like I say, big congratulations on the book because it is quite a piece of work. That, and I think if you haven't already done so, you need to get yourself a copy of it because it's pretty damn good. So yeah, I just know on a personal level like how much work went into that. So
That's appreciated, Lloyd. Thank you. And there we have it, a truly fascinating chat full of superb insights into the world of primary education. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, follow, or leave a review, depending on where you're listening. And if you have any questions for any of my guests, head over to the Thinking Deeply About Primary Mathematics YouTube channel and leave a comment and let the conversation continue long into the night. Until next time, thanks for listening.